I'm going to end with a small story because this is also from Pakistan. A young man came to a family. He wanted to get married. He asked for the daughter's hand. And the daughter agreed. The daughter liked the guy too. They met in college. They wanted to do things the right way. So they approached the family and they said, we'd like to get married. The girl's family said, no, you're from a lower class. He said, but I have a career. I'm top of my class. I have good education. No, you're from a lower class. We can't marry among you. It's haram on our side. They don't say the word haram, but they say it, don't they? And then they forced this girl to marry somebody else that she didn't want to marry. And maybe 2 years later, she committed suicide. And she's not the only one. She's not the only one. And even though I'm not endorsing suicide in any way, shape, or form, the fact that those parents buried that girl alive when they did that, I can guarantee you when they were forcing her to marry this boy that she didn't want to marry, they were saying, we're doing this for you. We know better. We understand. If you want to go to Jannah, don't you? Do you want to humiliate your father? Do you want to make your mother cry? This is what they were doing to her. To me, people nowadays are obsessed with mental health. And a lot of social media is flooded with mental health help. And there's a big discussion about setting boundaries, right? And emotional control and, manipulation, et cetera, et cetera. And you have to define yourself and you have to define your boundaries. And quite literally, a millennium and a half ago, Rasulullah ﷺ was told, the boundaries are set only by Allah. Don't let anybody else put any boundaries on you, even your loved ones. Even your loved one. It's like, this is not oh my God, I heard this amazing lecture about boundaries in relationships. Really? Study Surah Al-Tahrim, bro. It's been there. You're just late to the party. You're just late to the party. These teachings that we think are so profound and such an amazing discovery, if we just gave some time to Allah's book, we would get that and much more. Much, much more. That would rectify our lives. But it still doesn't answer the question, what's the relationship between this and the political, teachings at the end of the surah? I didn't understand the answer to this question until 2 years ago, I went to Pakistan. For the first time after 29 years, I traveled across Pakistan. And I met with university students, I met with families, I met with people in the business community. I just road tripped across the country and just met as many people as I could. And I had some observations, and I'm going to share just one of those observations with you in light of this khutbah. I met some of the most brilliant young men and women I've ever met in the world. Sharp, creative, really intelligent, really inquisitive, solution finding, et cetera, et cetera. But that's after a little bit of conversation, I would discover this is a really sharp young man. This is a really brilliant young lady, et cetera, et cetera. But what they would talk to me about is my mother is telling me that I can't talk to my cousin, and my dad is telling me to marry my cousin, and my uncle is doing this, and my and their mental ability, their mental potential, 90% of it is being used in family drama. 90% of it. And whatever little miskeen 10% they have left, what are they going to do with that? And now multiply that with hundreds of millions of people. Are those people going to invent something? Are they going to create something new? Are they going to create solutions in society? Are they going to solve their domestic, economic, social, political problems? You know why they can't do that? Because they have no batteries left. Because all of their batteries are exhausted in the family drama they walk into every time they open the doors of their house. There's nothing left. There's no creativity left. There's no energy left. There's no drive left. The pressure from the outside, the larger family, is so much and it's so overbearing that they basically don't even live free lives. They don't even live free lives. It was the most depressing thing to see, and I realized something. This is all a problem of قَدْ فَرَضَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ تَحِلَّةَ أَيْمَانِكُمْ. You just have to undo these pressures. When someone is asking you to do something that is stopping you from something halal, then they are in the wrong, not you. When people are depriving you from what Allah didn't deprive you, why is somebody قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَهَا لِعِبَادِهِ. قُلْ هِيَ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا خَالِصَةً يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Like Allah says, who's going to dare to take the beautiful things that Allah made and make them haram for His slaves? I answer, Muslim families. They dare, very openly dare, and make things haram that are clearly halal. You have a young man who wants to, I'll give you an example. You have a young man who wants to who has a very good talent in business. And he wants to start tijara. He wants to start a business. His father says, no, we are from a doctor's family. Your uncle is a doctor. Your older brother is a doctor. Your sister is a doctor. Your gravestone better say Dr. So-and-so, rahimahullah. Okay? And if you don't want to do this, I'm going to do something to you. You're going to have to call a doctor. Okay? So he can't. Is it permissible for a young man to pursue whatever career he wants, to pursue a living? Yeah. And they'll say, but if you don't listen to me, you'll not have my du'as. The father will say, you won't get my du'as if you don't listen to me. Now there's dua blackmail. There's dua blackmail. And that young man, if he started his business, maybe Jeff Bezos would have been poorer compared to him because he has the ideas and he has the talent. Somebody has an engineering concept. Somebody has a business concept. Somebody wants to, but no, the family said, no, you can't. That's not what we do here. We made that haram for you, even though it's halal for you. And what do? We create we create a suppression and a suppression and a suppression. And this affects every part of a man's life and a woman's life. I would confidently say for the vast majority of young men that go to their mother because they want to get married and say, mother, there's this girl in college. I think she's a good candidate for marriage. Your mother will make sure that you marry anyone on earth except her. Anyone else except her. Why? Because they need to make sure that you don't end up having too much freedom. Because if you get used to doing things your way, that's going to be a problem. We need to make sure. And many, maybe not in your family, but many are actually even sabotaging their own sons. They'll get them married to someone they know is problematic, because when the son has a problem, he'll come back running to the mother. And they'll do that because they can't lose control. And they call it love. We're doing this for you. We're doing this. And you tell me, how are those young men that are depressed, that are not happy with their spouse, that were not happy even getting married? They only did it because their mother forced them, their father forced them. Or these girls that got married because their mother and father forced them. Or they said, I'm going to complain about you on Yawm al-Qiyamah, etc., etc. The person this young man wanted to marry, he had a haqq to marry who he wanted to marry unless it was haram. He had a right to marry. But we deny them openly, and we create a society of depressed young men. And then they're not just depressed in their marriage, they're depressed at their job. They're depressed in their life. They don't have the energy to think big. They don't think about solutions because they don't even have a solution for their own life. They're paralyzed. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in a position of leadership. He cannot afford to be depressed. He cannot afford to be stressed out about family drama. He has big issues to deal with. He has a military that's ready to kill every Muslim. He's got spies on the inside of Medina that are trying to destroy this ummah. He's got an ummah to lead, to teach, to guide, to mentor, to motivate. How is he going to motivate anyone when he himself is demotivated by the things that are happening inside his house? How's he going to do that? The first problem has to be solved first. The strength of a man, the strength of a woman, the strength of the generations comes from inside the house. If we have hundreds of millions of Muslim families, the only time they feel stress-free is when they're outside the house. That's the only time they feel stress-free. And the moment they get a call, when are you coming back? Oh, I got to go back in there. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. You know? If that's what the household has become, then the ummah is in a state of stagnation. We cannot fight any enemy. We cannot find any solutions because we're paralyzed. That's the lesson Allah is giving us in these ayat. That's why it started with the personal. We think personal, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? That is the biggest deal. What is going on in here in the minds of young men and women? What's going on in here that they don't say? The sadness that they carry, the hopelessness that they carry, the burden of so many expectations that aren't even from Islam. They're not even from this deen. They're just artificial expectations from the spouse, from the mother, from the father, from the community, from the larger family. Oh my God, expectations. And none of them have anything to do with this deen. None of them. And when this poor young man decides to make one request that is even halal for him, he gets slaughtered, emotionally slaughtered. And then we expect this ummah to rise. Allah did not give us surahs by accident. Allah did not give us surahs that we just recite and move on. He gave us solutions. He gave us a way to carry out how we deal with our families, how families are supposed to operate, how families are supposed to be. How do you build a family that's drama-free? How do you even build that? And so, the last thing I'll share with you, I've got to keep track of time. Yeah, just on time. Last thing I'll share with you. In this surah, Allah says something very strange. He doesn't say it anywhere else in the Quran. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. Those of you who believe, save yourselves and save your families from the fire. Save yourselves and save your families from the fire. And we know that if you already have iman, because the ayah began, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Iman is already there. So iman is not the thing that will lead them into hellfire. It's not kufr. They're not doing kufr. That's not the problem. So what else is there? Well, there's isyan. There's disobedience. You know, كَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْكُفْرَ وَالْفُسُوقَ وَالْعِصْيَانِ. So what's fusuq and isyan? Fusuq and isyan are corruption and disobedience. The surah began with, what is the first disobedience to Allah? When you take something halal and you make it haram. That's disobedience to Allah also. And if your families are getting used to that disobedience, and they are doing it themselves and they're putting it on you, if you are going to go along with it, you are encouraging their disobedience to Allah. You're not saving yourself and you're not saving them from the hellfire. Allah says, save yourselves and your families from the hellfire. And we know a believer who has taqwa is a believer who minds the word of Allah. When Allah gives them an instruction, they take it seriously. And they don't let themselves or their families violate that instruction. They don't encourage it. They don't build it. So Allah gave this instruction in the middle of this surah because this is not just a matter of how this will destroy our generations in this dunya. This problem can even become a serious problem for our akhirah. It's our akhirah also. I'm going to end with a small story because this is also from Pakistan. A young man came to a family. He wanted to get married. He asked for the daughter's hand. And the daughter agreed. The daughter liked the guy too. They met in college. They wanted to do things the right way. So they approached the family and they said, we'd like to get married. The girl's family said, no, you're from a lower class. He said, but I have a career on top of my class. I have good education. But no, you're from a lower class. We can't marry among you. It's haram on our side. They don't say the word haram, but they say it, don't they? And then they forced this girl to marry somebody else that she didn't want to marry. And maybe 2 years later, she committed suicide. And she's not the only one. She's not the only one. And even though I'm not endorsing suicide in any way, shape, or form, the fact that those parents buried that girl alive when they did that, I can guarantee you when they were forcing her to marry this boy that she didn't want to marry, they were saying, we're doing this for you. We know better. We understand. If you want to go to Jannah, don't you? Do you want to humiliate your father? Do you want to make your mother cry? This is what they were doing to her. They were making her do something that was, she had something halal, and they made that haram for her. They deprived her of her right, and then they forced something on her, and they imposed that on her, and they did zulm to her. So just like on Judgment Day, the baby girl that was born, that was buried alive, will be questioned. بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. Right? That's a physical burial. There's a psychological burial that's happening in Muslim families by the millions of our sons and our daughters. And that needs to stop. That needs to stop because we believe in the word of Allah and we fear to make something haram that Allah Himself has made halal. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us wisdom from His book, guidance from His book. May Allah Azza wa Jal give us a commitment to the sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And may Allah Azza wa Jal make us truly people of taqwa who stay away from the haram, and we don't violate or prohibit the halal that Allah has made, and thus we fulfill the requirements of our taqwa. May Allah Azza wa Jal forgive all of our mistakes and protect us and our families from all kinds of fitna. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Quran al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikril hakim.